Welcome to Magnificent Living Today. Are you living a life of optimal health? Do you want to make changes in your life? Do you need help setting and achieving goals? Are you ready to reform and reshape your mind, body, and spirit? Are you looking for more balance in your life? Many of us are thinking about starting a better lifestyle program, both for ourselves and or our family. We all know how difficult it can be to motivate others when we ourselves are not motivated. Sometimes we all need a little help reaching our goals, and that's why Magnificent Living Today is here for you.
Welcome to Magnificent Living Today. I'm your host, Powell, and today we're going to be talking about goal setting and New Year's resolutions and why resolutions don't work and why goal settings do work. Don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back. Anything that annoys you is teaching you patience. Anyone who abandons you is teaching you how to stand up on your own 2 feet. Anything that angers you is teaching you forgiveness and compassion. Anything that has power over you is teaching you how to take your power back. Anything you hate is for teaching you unconditional love. Anything you fear is for teaching you courage to overcome your fear. Anything that you can't control is teaching you to let go and trust the universe. Welcome back to Magnificent Living Today. And we're going to start first with why goal setting is important. I have Alexis Scott here with me today. Welcome, Alexis.
Thank you.
How are you today?
I'm well. How are you?
Barely awake. We had a little power shortage in Laurel today, so my alarm clock didn't go off, so I'm going by my notes. So we're going to talk about the benefits of goal setting. And I always say goal setting, what it does is it sets you up to have a more positive image of yourself, and then it also allows you to explore the possibilities. Whenever I say I'm going to create a New Year's resolution, a resolution lasts just about a month. So the month of January, I might think of my resolution. It doesn't say that I have a plan, and it also sets me up kind of for failure because a resolution, by February, New Year's is gone. And once New Year's is gone, the resolution, it's very easy to dissolve that resolution and just say, okay, well, it didn't work. I'll wait until next year. So let's talk about New Year's resolutions. How do you feel about them?
New Year's resolutions, if you look at the word resolution, resolve, you're coming to some kind of conclusion that you need to resolve something. However, like you said, getting past that first month is one of the keys. So I think goal setting can be any time of the year, but if you need something to say, like a good time to do it would also be spring or in the moment. Like when you feel that you need to really change a habit, start setting the goal then, when you're at your strongest point, I would say. Not when you're stressed out, not when you're going through something and you won't do what you think you want to do. So I would say one of the keys would be to set it at a time when it's doable, when it feels like it's really doable for you.
And it says it takes 21 days to change a habit or to create a habit. And so I think that that's a very important thing to look at when you look at even resolving something, because even resolving something takes 21 days because you're going to have to change something about whatever it is that you think you need to resolve. And then the other part is, why are you trying to resolve it? Are you trying to get rid of something? Are you trying to gain something? Are you doing it for somebody else? Because anything you do for somebody else is not going to work. So I always say, if someone says to you, you need to stop smoking, and you stop smoking because someone tells you you need to, chances are you'll go back to smoking. If you walk into a hospital and you see somebody with smoking through a tracheal tube, that might change your opinion.
Right.
And when you change your opinion, then making that resolution is so much easier, or making it a goal. And I always say the goals are so much more applicable to your lifestyle. Because whenever you say, I'm going to resolve to do something, it's like saying, I'll try to do something, or I wish. And my grandmother always used to say, wish in one hand and in the other, and see which one gets full first. And it's all about really deciding that you're going to make that change, and then decide and realizing that wishing and hoping isn't going to get you there. It's creating the plan that's going to get you there.
And really wanting what your goal is. Really, really wanting it. Not wanting it just a little bit because, like you said, everybody else thinks that you should have it, but in a sense of being honest with yourself about what's doable. in that timeline that you're creating for yourself. Also, one of the things that's most important about goal setting, I think, is to take small steps to create that goal, but do something that activates that energy towards the goal. At least every day. If not every day in a small way, then at least once a week if it's a large goal. Do you know, if it's a smaller goal, if it's a weight loss or something like that, apply something to something that helps you take action every day.
And it's about an investment.
Right.
A goal
And
is
in
an
yourself.
investment. So it's just like anything else that you want to grow or to cultivate. You have to decide what your goal is. So you have to identify it. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But you have to identify it and then allow that to become part of your everyday activity. Because if you say, I'm going to lose weight, and then you put that off and you're eating bad during the week and then dieting on the weekend or dieting during the week and eating whatever you want on the weekend, you kind of stop the progress of your goal. Whereas, again, we're going to talk about this a little bit, when you write it down, you become accountable for it. So I think that it's more, goal setting is much more applicable to success than saying I'm just going to resolve to do something, like I'm going to wish that I stop smoking or I'm going to wish that I lose weight that way.
I think also affirming what your goal is, instead of, it's as though if you don't affirm it to make it your reality, then it's like that same path of wanting or wishing. Oh, I want some more money. But if you affirm that you have the money, then you begin to start attracting things to you that makes that happen. That creates that manifestation of having this. If you want to change something in your life, absolutely, you really do have to set the goals down and be accountable. And if you're not a person that can hold yourself accountable, then you need some support around you.
I'm gonna give up one of my big secrets
Okay.
in front of you and everybody else. My very first goal, or resolution as it were, was I wanted to lose weight. When I was in the 11th grade, I weighed 250 pounds.
Wow, really?
And I remember going into the Husky section, and the last size they had was a 42. And my waist was a size 40. And I realized that I don't have anywhere to go with this. It's either continue to live in this husky world, and be considered the fat kid, or make a change. And when I said that I wanted to lose weight, everybody was like, that's not going to happen. I had a lot of naysayers. And I didn't have a lot of information on how do you lose weight, because all I knew was I was only eating what was put before me. And so I didn't have the option of saying, okay, well, 1970 something, there wasn't that much information about what was healthy, what was better to eat. There weren't, the Pritikin diet hadn't come out yet. There were a lot, the diets hadn't really, the diets that work hadn't come out yet. And so I remember saying to myself that I do not want to graduate high school being the fat kid. That was my goal. And I remember the first day that I started not eating or eating less, everybody kept questioning me, why aren't you eating, why aren't you cleaning your plate, why aren't you doing this? And I had so much negative energy pushing forward towards me, saying that you can't do this, and it almost made everyone else more comfortable that I was that I was exactly the way that I was. And people like things the way that they are because they like to put things in boxes. I was the fat kid. And so that was okay for everybody else, but it wasn't okay for me. And so, and we talked about this, instead of telling everybody what I was going to do, because the first time I tried, I told everyone. And everybody kept saying, oh, no, you're okay just the way you are. They kept pushing food on you. And then I decided, I'm just not going to say a word. And I just started walking, and I started drinking water, which to me didn't even, it hadn't even been a part of my equation before, because we grew up on Kool-Aid. That's what we drank, and it had lots of sugar in it. And I didn't even, with no knowledge whatsoever, didn't consider the sugar content or what that did with my weight. I just decided that I wanted to clean my system. And so I drank a lot of water. And unfortunately, I didn't eat a lot of food because I didn't know how to adjust my food. But by the time I got from the summer of 11th grade to beginning the 12th grade, I'd lost 100 pounds.
Wow.
and which you can do when you're 16. You know, you can't do that at 50, or you can't do that at 40. It's just different. And I'd lost the weight and reached my goal, and then realized I didn't know who I was at that point. And it's because I didn't have a clear-cut plan on who I wanted to be when I got to my goal. So now I had lost this weight, and I had to find a brand new identity. And being the fat kid was always my defense mechanism. And that was always, well, he can't do that because he's the fat kid. So I had there were a lot of things that were deemed to me because I was the fat kid. When I lost that identity of being the fat kid, I have to say there was a whole year where I didn't even know who I was in this equation. And I think a lot of people had a hard time identifying with me also, because that's how they had identified me. So now they had to switch their thought around. So I think that when you go in and you start setting your goals, when we're going to talk about this, it's very important that you lay out a game plan for what's going to happen when you achieve your goal. And I hadn't thought about when I lost weight, who I would be or what I would do or how it would change my life. And so when I got there, I was still empty. I thought I was going to be the happiest person on earth, and I got there, and now I was thought, okay, now who am I? You know, how do I identify myself?
I agree with that. Redefining is really interesting because you're not that same person. People don't treat you the same. You know, your family and friends, when I talk about support is something that it has to be people that are really on the same page with you. If they're not on the same page, then you are going to have the naysayers, especially family at some points, unfortunately, because they're the ones they're your tribe. They don't want you to go outside the box. They want you to be who you've been, who they're with the person they're comfortable with. But I think one of the really important things that you said was about not knowing who you were when you got to that other side. That's so powerful, because if you don't have a plan, you flounder. You know, so here you get to this point, you're 100 pounds less, and you're like, okay, so now what? Now what do I do with me? Especially a 12th grader.
Right.
So now you have to tell me what happened. So how did you begin to find out who you were? How did you begin to identify, okay, so this is who I want to be now?
I think that the benefit for me is that I did it at an opportune time. When I went through the 12th grade, very confused, because the kids didn't know how to treat me. My parents didn't know how to treat me. Everyone around me just couldn't identify Carl as being thin. And I had gone from being fat to extremely thin. And so then it became more, everyone was accusing me of being unhealthy. And so everywhere I went, people wanted to actually see me eat. You know, are you really eating? And it wasn't that I wasn't eating, I just started eating less than I was eating before. And like when I said an opportune moment, I left home right after the 12th grade and moved to California. And when I moved to California, I got to be whoever I wanted to be. Nobody knew the fat kid. So nobody had those preconceived notions of who I should have been or what I should have done or who I was going to be in my life. They only saw this person that I presented to them at that moment. And it gave me a lot of time for creation. And I always tell people that I think that the most important thing you can do is move someplace by yourself and find out who you really can be. Because when you're around people who are used to you being one way or another way, they'll very easily put you into that box and say that's who you are, and it's comfortable. That box gets warm and comfortable and cozy, and it's easy just to stay in that box. But to step out of the box takes everybody around you out of their comfort zone also. That's what I learned. So for me, moving and going into a completely different environment allowed me just to totally create a new Carl. Not the Carl that everyone expected, but this new person who I didn't even know who was. So it gave me a lot of room for exploration also.
That's interesting, because that was one of my growth spurts when I moved from the East Coast to the West Coast. Here, being the youngest in my family, I was just needing to do something different, to look at the world from a different perspective. So I followed my spirit, and that's where it took me. And I noticed that when I got into that part of my life, it was as though, and it was a goal to move to California. Once I got out there, I went twice. And on the way back home, the second time, I cried the entire way. It was just like something was drawing me there, you know? So it was just such a growing process, the piece about you being who you wanted to be, however you create yourself. Because that's so true that you can do that around someplace that's not familiar, if people don't know you, in a positive way.
And setting that kind of a goal is also so, it changes your perspective. When I went to California, I always lived in, we were middle class people. I never saw a roach in my life. And I remember I moved to California with a bunch of my friends, and we moved into this hotel, and in the hotel there were roaches. I had never seen a roach before, and it was like you turn the light off and turn it back on and there'd be roaches everywhere. And I just kept telling myself, I can't go back to who I was.
Right.
So I will live through this, I will sacrifice this to get to who I need to be. And I think that in goal setting, that's one of the things that you have to realize, is you have to sacrifice who you were to become who you are going to become. And a lot of people, they can't really go in there and sacrifice who they were or who they perceive people believe they were long enough to just become a different person. Because if you're going to lose 100 or over 100 pounds, you're going to become a different person. Your clothes are going to be different. The way that you move is going to be different.
Different
the way that
perspective.
you'll have a completely different perspective. And then are the people around you going to be able to deal with you with this new perspective? And I remember I worked in a weight loss clinic, and as people lost weight, they had a really hard time with the people in their lives. And so we talked about this before. When you look for that support system, you've got to also know that there's going to be the naysayers.
Exactly.
And realize that the naysayers, they only don't want you to change because they don't want to change. Because if I lost 20 pounds and you were 20 pounds overweight, you would have to re-examine why you can't lose 20 pounds. And so the naysayers often do that, not because they want to hurt you, but because they don't want to have to go inside of themselves to find out what's wrong with them.
Oh, certainly. It reflects their shortcomings, their weaknesses.
Yeah, so when you become that mirror and people have to look at that mirror, now you've done it, why can't they do it? Or now you've done it, they expect you think that they have to do it. My family thinks that I think everyone has to be thin. And it's not about being thin, it's about being healthy.
Being conscious and healthy.
And I always tell people, imagine your body as being the vehicle that you have to drive around in for the rest of your life. Do you want to drive around in an old, beat up, broke down truck, or do you want to ride in a Mercedes? And so your choice is to either create the broken down truck or to create the Mercedes. Or you can be right in the middle. It's what you're comfortable with. And when you set your goals, you have to realize your goals have to be something that you are comfortable with, and you don't have to consider the comfortable effect that it's going to have. Is it going to make my mother feel uncomfortable because now I've lost this weight? Is it going to make my mother uncomfortable because now I've decided to become a woman? Chaz Bono. You have to really consider yourself in your goal setting process. And I think a lot of times the fear of how other people will perceive me when I achieve my goal is also a goal buster.
It definitely is. And there are points in my life when I know that I've grown past people that have been in my life for a long time just because of the choices that I made, different from other people. And so when I set goals and know that, you have to be prepared for those changes that come. And the point of where you start and the point of where you're going, that point in between there, where there might be challenges, there might be conflict, there might be doubt, that's just between the point of where you are and where you're going. So the key when you have set a goal is to keep your eye on the goal, not to get caught up in the things that may come up during the process, because they're only there so that you can get through them to get to where you're going.
Exactly. And anytime you try to move to a new level in your life, a new
Things
devil
have to come up.
A new devil shows up. And
They have to.
It just does. And you have to realize that you have to look at that straight on and say, no, you're the devil. I'm not going to give in to this. Every time you try to lose weight, for some reason, you'll go to a party where somebody will try to push something on you. And we're going to talk about that. That you don't really necessarily want or need. And it's very important for you to identify, I don't need this, and be clear. And
self-sabotage.
Right.
Or other people trying to sabotage you and not even being conscious of it. Sometimes they're just not even conscious that they're sabotaging your intentions.
Also finding the point of forgiveness, because you are going to slip. There are going to be days when Even though you've been great with your diet and your exercise program, you're going to wake up one morning and you're going to say, you know what, today I just feel like eating what I want and I don't want to exercise, and it's okay. You know, you don't have to be perfect every day. You can take a break. And people sometimes when they take that break, now they feel like, okay, now I've taken the break, so all bets are off. I'll just go back to living the way I was. That's not the solution. The solution is to say, I needed a break. I got the break. Notice how you feel on that day when you eat the bad food again, because you don't feel good.
Right.
You just don't. Notice how you feel if you haven't exercised for a week. You don't feel the same. You don't feel as limber. You don't feel as though you're breathing as well. It changes your whole way of being. And when you realize that you're making positive changes, and then when you go back into the negative and you feel what those negative things that you did in the past, you know, you have to go back and realize every time I've tried to quit smoking, this has happened. And every time you quit smoking, if that happens, you have to avoid that. But some people, they go right back to the very same behavior. You know, I always see on Facebook, because Facebook is one of my favorite things, because people will tell their whole life story.
I know, it's amazing.
For no reason whatsoever. So I see people who will say, I had my last cigarette today, and 2 weeks later they'll go back and you'll see, okay, I had one cigarette, and then they don't mention it again. And it's all about not trying to broadcast it to the world, broadcast it to your soul. When you broadcast it to your soul, when you say, I am tired of this person who smokes, I'm tired of what it smells like, I'm tired of what it makes my clothes smell like, I'm tired of trying to hide it from other people, I'm tired of now that you can't smoke anywhere in public, now you have to go outside. I see people and it's freezing and they're outside smoking a cigarette. And I don't think that cigarette is going to make you feel any better, one. And two, you might end up getting the flu on top of it, or a cold, just from being out in the freezing weather. What is the benefit there?
And the other piece to this is the core. When you talk about forgiveness and the re-stimulation of certain behaviors, when you say, for instance, you do what you're talking about in terms of eating something that you don't normally eat, you backslide a little bit. What were you feeling at that moment? Like, what situation was going on? Was there a trauma that was re-stimulated? Was there an emotion that was re-stimulated that made you want to reach for a certain kind of food? Those are things that you really have to go deep with, because even if it's not food, if it's just a behavior like the cigarette smoking, there's a core issue that has to be addressed, identified and addressed in order for you to make a change, a permanent change, you know, so that you don't backslide again.
Back in the day when I was in my 20s, I smoked, and I remember, yeah, and you know, it was just because it was the grown-up cool thing to do. And I remember the day that I decided that I didn't want to smoke anymore, and what I had to do is I had to change not only myself, I had to change my friends, because all of the people I knew smoked, and every time I was around them, it made me want to smoke. And if I didn't smoke, there was always someone there to offer me a cigarette. You know, do you want to smoke? Do you want to smoke? Do you want to smoke? And for me, the catalyst, the thing that just said to me, no, I don't want to do this anymore, is I would watch other people smoke. And I would just think of how disgusting it looked, just sitting there, putting that thing in your mouth and pulling it back out. And I got a straw. And I decided, okay, this is how I'm going to quit smoking. I got the straw, and every time I wanted to smoke, I picked up the straw. The amazing thing to me was, I didn't realize it, but I only picked up the straw when I didn't want to do something. So I realized that smoking for me was more about not doing, it was procrastination. I don't want to have to do this filing right now, so I'll have a cigarette, and then I'll come back and I'll do. I don't want to really do this right now, so I'll pause and have a cigarette, and then I'll come back and I'll do. And when I realized that all it was a procrastination tool for me, then it was much easier for me to put down, because I realized that every single time I said I'm going to have a cigarette until I do, I said, okay, I'll do, and then I'll have the cigarette. And by the time I did, I no longer wanted to have the cigarette. So yeah, for me, it was definitely a way of getting around the things that I really didn't want to get to, and so it was more procrastination than anything else.
It's really interesting that's the key to change, and any kind of goal has to do with you making a conscious decision and a choice and an intention to change something in your life, to make it better, to not do it anymore, to leave it, to get beyond it. So in order to do that, if you don't understand where the core reason, and this is how we started this conversation, you don't understand where that core comes from, then there's always that chance that it'll be re-stimulated.
And change is a very hard thing for people, because change
can be.
Yeah, it means you have to re-identify so many other things about yourself. Changing your eating habits means that not only do you have to change your eating habits, but you have to change maybe the restaurants you go to.
Your perception of food.
Yeah, your perception of food. Maybe the people that you hang out with. Having to say the hardest to your family that no, I don't want to eat the greens that have the ham hock in it, because I don't.
It has the ham hock in it.
It has the ham hock in it, and I'm not going to eat that. And my family, they revel in any time that I eat something that I'm not supposed to. I remember once I came home and they had chicken wings, and I hadn't had a chicken wing probably in 10 years. And they kept saying, eat one, eat one, eat one. And I ate one, and everybody's camera came out and took a picture. And I thought, see, now I've eaten this. I didn't feel good about eating it in the first place. But even the taste of it, when I tasted it, it just didn't taste the same as the thought that I had in my head. So sometimes we go back and we have to re-examine, these are only the habits or the thoughts that I've had since I was a child. We talk about comfort foods.
Right.
You think about the things that your mother made, and sometimes they make you feel comfortable, and for the moment they make you feel better. But then you have to go back and reevaluate exactly what is it about that food that makes me feel better. It's not really the food itself.
It's the emotional
attachment. It's the emotional attachment. And so you just have to get emotionally attached to something that's healthier.
Exactly. And then many times it doesn't taste the same. It just doesn't taste the same. Like, for instance, the other day, I haven't been eating a lot of curries. And they have these wonderful curried cashews, and at this place called Roots that I go to. And so I was in there and I bought some. They were really expensive, like $6 for like one little thing, and I had them. And when I tasted them, it was kind of like, okay, so is it me or my taste buds changed? Because there was a time when they were like one of those nonstop foods, where you can't stop eating it. Completely different. And that's because there's some things that I had to reassess in my little repertoire of foods, so that, because there's some things that I'm trying to heal and work on temporarily, so that I needed to get those things out. And then once I crowded those out, remember I was telling you about crowding things out by eating more of the good thing, and it just crowds out the thing that you don't want, which is a really good way to balance it, so that way it's not like you're missing something. Then your body begins to crave what you've been crowding it out with, like more vegetables or maybe seeds instead of nuts. But in my case, I don't know what changed, but it certainly didn't taste the same. So sometimes when you do change something and you go back to it, it's just not the same thing, because you've changed. Your perception has changed.
Right.
And dare I say, your taste buds can change as well.
Oh, right. It's the same with smoking a cigarette. I couldn't even imagine.
Putting one to you.
Yeah, exactly. But I know that when I walk into my office, there are often guys outside smoking, and I walk through that smoke, and I just smell that, and I just think, I can't even imagine putting that back into my system. But, when you're doing it, you don't feel that way, you don't think that way.
No, not at
but
all.
It's just like French fries. I love hamburgers. That's one of my things that I allow myself to have.
French fries is one of mine.
Yeah, but I realize
Sweetness.
that if I do without the sugar drink, and I do without the French fries, and I eat a real hamburger, not something that's been processed, but actually real beef, I feel better about eating the hamburger because I didn't have the French fries. And I went to a restaurant, I won't call you out, and I got a hamburger and French fries maybe 3 years ago, and I really it was like my guilty pleasure that I got these French fries. And they put it in a paper bag, and I drove from the place to my office. And when I got to my office and I picked up the bag, the French fries had soaked the bag with grease. And they didn't even look desirable to me anymore. And even though they smelled good, the whole time I was driving, I was thinking, I can't wait to get to the office so I can open up this bag and have these French fries. When I actually looked at what they did to the paper bag, I realized that that's what's going to be in the lining of my stomach. And it just became undesirable to me. So I think that when you can change your perception about, you just take an honest look at what things are. You take an honest look at how much sugar is in a drink, and how much sugar you should have, or how much sugar is in a drink, and then how does it make you feel after you have it? Because a lot of people claim that cola at 3 o'clock is the thing that gets them through. But by 5 o'clock, they're completely crashed from that.
It's the caffeine.
And yeah, it's the caffeine and the sugar. And once that goes away, you feel worse. You don't feel better.
Exactly.
Where if you would have had a reasonable snack and maybe some water, that would have replenished you and given you the oxygen that you need, H2O, the oxygen that you need to revitalize your system. So I think it's also reevaluating and realizing that there are better solutions. I'm going to take a break right here, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about smarter goals. Don't go anywhere, because we have a really good show for you. Smarter goals. Smarter goals are S, specific, M, measurable, A, achievable, R, realistic, T, time certain, E, exercise daily, R, reviewed and rethought. Welcome back to Magnificent Living Today, and now we're going to talk about smarter goals. I'm going to use my cheat sheet because I want to make sure that I don't miss anything, so I can be smarter. SMARTER is an acronym. The S stands for specific. Your goal should be specific. And one of the things that I'll never forget is I went to a lecture, I must have been 22 years old, Len Kravitz, thank you. He said to me, specific is terrific. And that was his little motto. And I have lived by that my entire life. And it's because when you can specifically say, this is what I want, this is what I expect, and this is what I'm going to have, it comes to fruition. When you kind of say, this is kind of what I want, I'm not sure, it's not about saying I want to get a job. It's about saying, I want to get a job at this company, and I want this position, and I want this salary. Because when you make those specifications, it can come to fruition. If you just say, I want to get a job, that's loose. It could be anywhere. And the truth is, you probably wouldn't want to take a job anywhere. So specific is terrific. Measurable. You should be able to measure your goals. If you cannot go back and look and say, okay, this is where I was and this is where I am today, you cannot count your progress. And that's why journaling is so important. Because when you can say, okay, last week I weighed 300 pounds, this week I weighed 288 pounds, you're moving in the right direction. It may not be as quickly as you want. It may not happen exactly the way that you had planned, because life, let's face it, doesn't happen the way we plan. I say every time we make a plan, God is upstairs laughing, because he's like, no, this is what's going to happen. And you just have to learn that this is the flow of what's going to happen. But when I can say, okay, I specifically want this, I'm going to do my very best to measure it, and with weight loss, I always tell people, don't jump on the scale, grab a tape and measure yourself, because your measurements will change even if your weight doesn't.
That's correct. Yeah.
And we're moving. The A in SMART is achievable. Is your goal actually achievable? If I weigh 500 pounds and I say I want to weigh 250 pounds in 6 months, is that really achievable? No. It's just not going to happen. I always say, if it took you 10 years to gain the 100 pounds, it might take you 10 years to get it off. But it can be in progression. And being realistic, that's the R. Realistically, where are you today? And when you look at where are you realistically, then is this achievable? So I think that a lot of times people set themselves up for things that aren't realistic. And if your goal is not realistic, let's face it, you'll fail. And so you have to always constantly, and I'm going to get to this, evaluate your goals and go back and say, okay, I've gone this far. Not that I would suggest smoking for anyone, but I would always say that if you're smoking 3 packs of cigarettes a day, and you say my New Year's resolution or my goal is to stop smoking, don't try to do it in a day, because it didn't happen that way. I say, make it so that in 3 months, I'm smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day. Major progress. In 6 months, I'll be down to 1 pack a day. And then by the end of the year, I will quit. This way, now, we're going to talk about that, it's time certain. So now you've really taken the time to say, okay, in this amount of time, I can achieve this goal. But it doesn't have to be at this moment. And a lot of times people think, I have to stop doing everything that I'm doing in order to achieve this goal. you can't change your whole world in one day. It just doesn't happen.
So being specific, that first one, I think is really powerful, because when you are very specific about what you want, more energy goes towards that specific thing. But at the same time, there's that balance where you have to be specific, know what you want, write it down and so forth, but also surrender it to however it comes about. Do you know? And so by doing that, you're open to sometimes even better things come through, for you, rather than what you specifically asked for. So I love that piece. That specific is terrific, because the more you can specialize in, even in business, because I'm thinking of business and quite a few things, like if you just want to say, I want to lose weight, and you don't have a goal in mind, I want to be 120 pounds, and look, be specific and put emotion behind it. Get emotional about it. Get excited about where you're going. Because the more you show emotion behind something, the more the energy coagulates to that point, of whatever it is you're focused on. So focus is key. If you think of like the sun, do you know how with a magnifying glass, it can burn something up because of the intensity of the focus? So the more focused, the more specific, but then at the same time, create the intention and let it go. Surrender it.
When I was a little kid, that was one of my favorite tricks. I'd have a magnifying glass and I'd wait till the sun came on and I'd shine it right on somebody. One of the bad things I did. The other thing about having the SMART goals, the ER, is exercise daily and reviewed and reevaluated. Because sometimes we say, I want this. And right before you get it, you realize that you really would have rather had something else. In business, and you talk about that, I said to myself 8 years ago that I wanted to create a business. And in the 8 years that I've been in business, it has morphed and changed so many times, and it's become so many different things. My first goal was to have a yoga and Pilates studio because I wanted people of color to exercise. And I thought I would be the spokesperson for that. And then I realized that as I had the business the first 2 or 3 years, that unfortunately the people of color were the people who came and went, whereas my people who, be real, white people, they tend to stay and actually achieve their goal with me. And so I had to, first start to change my goal as far as I can't change the race. I can't change the way people act. I can't change the way people view what is valuable and what's not, because it was very cultural, I realized. I realized that for other people, that was something that they saw as a necessity to living. Where with people of my culture, they didn't see that as a necessity. And so I had to reevaluate the way that I delivered the information. I couldn't just come and say, come exercise. I had to give them every reason why it was important. I had to find the first person who came and told me that they reduced their blood pressure medication by exercising. Now I came to them with valuable information. So if any of you are on blood pressure medication, then come to me, because we can reduce the amount of medication that you're taking.
Absolutely.
One, which saves you money. So now you don't have a reason why you can't come exercise, because if you tell me that it costs you too much, don't tell me it costs you too much, because if you exercise, you'll cut down on your grocery bill, you'll cut down on your medication. So there are a lot of other things that you can cut out in order to be able to afford that. So I had to go back and reevaluate it that way. Then I think probably I was very gung-ho. I wanted everyone to exercise and exercise hard. And then I had to realize that not everybody wants to exercise hard. And so I had to create different workouts so that they accommodated different people. Because not everyone wants to work out as hard as I do. And when I found having the easier classes and allowing people the space to grow, the retention of my membership became much better, because I wasn't trying to force them into the exercise that I would have done for myself, because that's what I did in the beginning, and finding what exercise worked for them.
So the modification piece is really important, because I had a similar situation with a business where your intention is one thing and your vision that you see is one thing. I had an Afrocentric preschool. All organic food, you know, everything that I used. And this is all for my daughter so that I could attract people to us that had that consciousness and ate like us. What I found was that I was attracting all kinds of people. So I had to shift it several times to make it multicultural, to embrace organic, vegan, but also people that had like a little bit of chicken in there or a little bit of fish, because that's who was coming to me. They appreciated it, but the Afrocentric piece limited me actually in Colombia. So I learned the same thing. So when you're setting these goals, and over the years or over time, you begin to see that, okay, something would work better if I just tweaked it here, or if I changed this here, or let me reevaluate this. So reassessing in the midst of, prior to you getting to what you thought you wanted. So modifying is extremely important. I think it's important as well.
You know, because I set my goal for 2012, and my goal starts with helping Laurel get more healthy. And so I'm working with the mayor, and we're doing a Keep Moving and Get Moving and Keep Moving for Life program. And I think that the Get Moving and Keep Moving is the important thing, because you can get people up and move for a day. You know, you can take them out on the lawn and dance around for a minute or two, and then they go back and they live their lives the way that they lived their lives before. But to set up a program for them where they can get moving and then keep moving, that's the real challenge.
And be inspired to move.
And be inspired to move. And I think that, so for me, when I'm going through, this is what my goal is, but I have to really assess how am I going to achieve this goal. And it can't be about my thought process. I have to go out to the people and say, what can I do for you to help you get more active? What can I do for you that wants you to look at a better solution for your eating habits? What can I do for you that will not only get you moving today, but keep you moving in the future?
Right.
And I really believe for the kids, because I think that the obesity problem with children is just, it's astronomical. Every time I look at it, I think, I cannot believe it. And when I go to the stores and I see kids and I think, I'm 50-something years old, and I'm in better shape than an 18-year-old. It's frightening to me. And then to think that those are the people that are going to have to lead our country and lead our world is even more frightening. And so I've learned that you can't just approach the child, because the child doesn't do the grocery shopping. The child doesn't set the schedule for the week. It's the parent. So if I can get a parent to come out and exercise, it's going to make the child feel like exercising is a valid thing to do. But if I can't get the parent out to exercise, how on earth am I going to keep that kid interested in something that's not going to be part of their family values? So I think that eating better and exercising has to become part of your family values. And when it becomes a part of your family values, it changes the whole perspective and the whole scope of what you're doing. But like I said, my goal is to get the parents and the children out and get them to exercise together, because, you know, together we're going to get better. Together we're going to get stronger. If we divide ourselves and say this is for the kids and this is for the adults, I don't really feel as though the message is going to be the same.
And you want that foundation, the family being the foundation, as you said, for the change to occur. And also the support is there between the interaction and the interrelationships of the family. So I would agree with that one too. I think that's a great idea. Just to get everybody in the sense of, especially children that really don't understand that even on that McDonald's commercial or those commercials that are targeting you, it's just, if they could compare real food to what they're eating at McDonald's, and my daughter does, you know, you can taste the difference.
Oh, yeah,
you can really taste the difference, but that's not what their concern is right now. And if the parent doesn't step in, like you're saying, if the parent doesn't step in and set an example at home, then it's even more challenging for them. You know, there's a work day that's rushed, and that's the quickest way to do it is to stop by a fast food place. Then they need some other type of mentor, somebody that they really appreciate to look up to and to make a change and to be different, because they also don't want to be different than the other kids. So to do that in a group setting is a great idea.
I was listening to Tom Joyner the other morning. They were talking about a child that was taken away from his parents because he was obese and the parents weren't helping. And although I don't really agree with, I think that was a bit drastic. I think the parents have to take a little bit of responsibility for, like you said, I remember when I was a little kid, going to McDonald's was a treat. But back in those days, we didn't know what food was. We didn't have all of the information. The facts hadn't come in. But now, I worked at a dance studio for a few years, and I would see the parents come in with the Happy Meals, and the kids were happy for a minute, but they weren't happy very long. And you could even see the crankiness happen before your very eyes.
Yeah.
They would eat the food, and within an hour, it would change their mood completely. And I like the whole grease on the bag thing. I just think whenever I see a greasy bag, it just doesn't look appetizing to me.
Your bag is the body.
Yeah, right.
Pretty much.
Doesn't make me want to eat that. But I think the parents have to take responsibility for, I was in a hurry, so I just took them to McDonald's. No, because how easy is it to grab a piece of fruit? You know, I mean, it's just as easy to go to a store and get some fruit as it is to go to McDonald's.
Or have something around the house. And the way I nipped that in the bud was getting organic chicken nuggets, you know, buying them organic. And that way it was easier to just go ahead and let my daughter have some, because once I put her in public school, it was really challenging, because then she was around a whole different consciousness of, you know, parents, kids. You know, there was all these ice cream socials, and for the life of me, I can't figure out why it's always got to be an ice cream social. Can it be another kind of food? You know, and if it is, offer an array of different ice creams. Offer some non-dairy stuff, because a lot of kids don't eat, are lactose intolerant now. You know, so, I mean, there's just different ways that we could approach it, where, once again, that crowding out theory can come in, where we can put in the good stuff, and as you begin to crowd out the stuff that's not so good to have all the time, the child's eating habits change.
Yeah.
You know?
I saw an
It's completely possible.
interesting study about milk. And they were talking about lactose intolerance and why we didn't have it when we grew up, why no one talked about it. And it's actually the way that the milk is processed.
Yes.
And so
And
once
what it has in it.
What it has in it. And once it's homogenized, we don't even know what homogenized meant. No one told us.
Right.
But when you read, if you go to the internet and read what homogenization is, it would make you not want to drink the milk, because it's the byproducts that they put in the milk.
The process, yeah.
It's the processing. That's the thing that makes you sick.
That's one. And also because 70% of the world's population doesn't produce lactase, which is the enzyme that breaks down lactose, which is a milk sugar.
Right.
So it's Asians don't drink. I mean, there's just so many other cultures that don't have cows. You know, I mean, there's no affiliation between that. But you know, we like dairy, and there are people that can consume dairy. It's just it is part of the process. Raw would be your best bet.
Exactly right.
You know, raw would be your best bet in terms of if you're going to internalize it, but not internalize it, ingest it. But 70%, that's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot.
That's a lot. But the dairy industry really doesn't want you to know that, because milk does a body what?
Good.
You know, what kind of milk and who? You know?
Goat milk. Anyway, we're going to take a little break here, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about the people who will break your goals right down for you, goal busters and the food pushers. So don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back. It's the holiday season, and it's time for the food pushers. Welcome back to Magnificent Living Today, and now it's Alexis's turn. We're going to talk about those people who will try to get you to eat no matter how hard you tell them you do not want that today. So let's talk about the food pushers.
Okay. Food pushers are very much like, this is a little severe, but drug pushers. They want you to have what they're eating. They really want you to enjoy it. And some do it with, it's completely unconscious. You know, they're just like, here, have some more. Others are kind of like your family was, here, eat a chicken wing, you know, even though they know that that's something that you're trying not to do. So given it's the holidays, and we have a lot of parties and a lot of social events to go to, there's always going to be food pushers there, always. And so what we've got here is a few tips for you about how you can possibly deal with these food pushers. And these tips work if you apply them. So I'm going to read from my cheat sheet now so that we can help you understand how to deal with this issue, because it can become an issue if you really don't know how to address it. You'll be eating everything that people push into your face. So one of the first things is Antilli. Well, this is my specialty. You have to try some. Now, I had that happen not too long ago. I'm not a big fan of wheat right now. I'm trying to just see what it does and what it doesn't do. And someone made a pumpkin pie. So it was like one little piece is not going to kill you, Alexis. And no, they're absolutely right, it's not. However, I know what it's going to do to me in the next 24 hours. So your response to that pushing would be like, I will in a bit. You know, with that person, when they offer you, here, try my specialty, I will in a little bit. I'll come back to it as soon as I finish, eating what I'm eating now. Why this works. Stalling is a great tactic for food pushers because they forget about it and they usually walk away from you. They get involved in pushing it to somebody else.
Exactly. That's what a pusher does.
Just pushes on. Think of how that drug pusher, like I said, he can't get you to buy, he'll go to somebody else.
Right.
So that's one way. Odds are they are going to walk away and they'll start pushing it to somebody else. Another tactic is just try it. This is my favorite. This is my favorite and this is your favorite and you've always eaten this. You'll love it. Here, just try it. So your response, I had some already and it's so delicious. Why this works? Of course it works because you've already told them, you've nurtured them by letting them know that you've had some of it. And you're also giving them the compliment that it's delicious. So they should scurry along too.
Right.
Okay, so what's another one? It's just once a year, like this person told me. It's one little piece of pie, Your response? But I'll probably live to celebrate more holidays if I stick to my own diet plan. Letting them know that even though it's once a year, if you're really sticking to, say you don't eat dairy, and you do have a slice of
Cream
cheesecake.
Cream
Yeah,
pie.
exactly. Something with cheese or dairy in it, and it could be fabulous. But at the same time, the next 48 hours, you're mucousy, you know what it does to you. Step back and let them know. It's just not worth it for me right now. That's basically what you're telling them. Looks like someone's obsessed with dieting. And that's the same thing Carl was going through when people were saying, you're really skinny, you need to eat something. Are you eating? Your family is always concerned, and friends. If you're too thin or if you lose weight too quickly, there must be something else going on. So what would be a good tactic to deal with that one? If you don't push that, wait a minute.
I would tell them,
What
look what it did to you. Because people do, when you lose weight, it makes other people uncomfortable because it makes them have to evaluate their own weight situation.
Exactly.
And so I find the people who push that on you and say, it's not going to kill you just this one time. No, it may not kill me this one time, but the other side of the equation is this may be something that I really love, and then I try it that one time, and then I'll want it over and over and over again. It's like me with chicken wings, because I have to admit now, they've become one of my very favorite things. And it was years since I had eaten them, but I also realized that very early on, because I had them probably for 3 weeks when I first had them. I was like, every day I wanted them. And then I realized that if I had them, and I said to myself, I'll allow myself to do it on Saturdays if I feel like it. And if I feel like it was the important part of the equation, because I don't feel like it every Saturday. I might crave them during the week, but if I wait until Saturday, by Saturday I may not want them anymore. So it's sometimes just telling that person, I'll have, like you said, I'll have some in a bit, or I've already had some, or, I just don't really want that today.
Right.
It makes them feel more comfortable.
So if someone approaches you and says, it looks like someone's obsessed with dieting, just let them know that it's not that so much an obsession, but you're being conscious about what you're putting into your mouth.
Right.
Which is a much better way to say to someone, I'm just being more conscious about what I eat because I need to. I need to. So in terms of... you need to put some meat on those bones. You know that one.
Yeah, right.
That one. Wow, you're getting so small. You need to put some meat on those bones. What would you say to that?
I would tell them that, I'm very comfortable where I am at this moment. And, I had a lot of meat on my bones before, and that didn't make me feel as comfortable as I feel right now. So at this weight, I feel my best.
That's a very good answer, I think. Because people say that to me sometimes if they haven't seen me in a while. They're like, wow, you look thinner, you look healthy, but you look thinner. It's like, but I'm okay with it, You need to eat something. I'm fine. Let's see.
I think we got time for one more.
Okay, one more.
What's your favorite?
My favorite is you just have to try some of this. You know, you just have to try some of this, Alexis. I know you're on your, you know, your health kick or whatever, but you just try. You have to try some of this. What would be your answer to that?
When people come to me with, you know, you have to try this, I would say, like you said, either I've tried it before. If that didn't work, I would say I'll try some later. If that doesn't work, then I'll be very blunt with them and just say, you know, that's not really one of my favorite things to eat. And I'd rather save my calories for the things that I really want. When people ask me about sugar drinks, I always say, if I want to have sugar, I'll wait until dessert. And even though I'm not crazy about dessert, I skip the sugar drink. And then by the time I get to dessert, I've eaten so much food. That's my next answer. I've eaten so much food, you know, I'm really full right now. And my favorite is Christmas and Thanksgiving when people go, unbuttoning their pants and they're sitting around like, oh, they don't feel better. You don't feel better because you
really,
did that.
really don't.
You really don't. And when you realize that, and for all holidays, this is my biggest suggestion, eat in increment. You know, realize you can have everything, but you just can't have everything at one time.
At once.
At once.
Exactly.
And so if you allow your body time to digest this, and then you can flow into the next part. So I can eat a little bit for dinner, and then I can have a little bit afterwards. And I always try just a little bit of everything. That way, no one's insulted. You know, I've tried a little bit of everything. If it's not exactly what I want, I put it on my plate, and then when I'm finished, maybe I push that over to the side and I don't eat it at all. But the fact is, it was on my plate when I sat down.
That's a good way to put it on your plate, so that everybody sees you've got a little bit of something on.
Yeah, because my family watches my plate. When I sit down at the table, everyone looks like, what's he eating? You know, and they think I'm looking at their plate. But I focus on, and I think that's so important for all of us, focus on you. You can't change the world around you, not in a moment. So the most important thing is when you make those decisions and decide to make those goals, make them personal, make them for you. You can't make them for anybody else. You can't change for anyone else. You can't do for anyone else. You can't be better for anyone else. Be better for you. Have a wonderful holiday. You are magnificent. You are powerful. And we will see you next year. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.